Some people say that God of War 2018 is the hardest one when it comes to difficulty, especially while playing on the Give Me God of War difficulty. Well, today we're going to settle the debate once and for all and figure out which game is the hardest. But before we do so, the year is ending and I'm almost there to 4K subscribers. I can almost touch it. So I believe we can make it, and I trust you to subscribe to the channel and to drop a like. Thank you, and let's dive into it. I gotta say, going back to God of War 2018, which is a game that I love and I actually platinum, it was a bit rough. I think you know by now that God of War Ragnarok won most accessible game of the year because of all those accessibility features they had included in that game, and it deserves to be awarded so that more games can follow that step. And going back to 2018, it was a bit difficult because I couldn't run automatically. Every single time I wanted to run, I had to press R3. And you know that every single time you press, listen to that noise. Every single time you press R3 on your controller, you are getting one step closer to your controller drifting, to your stick drifting. So every single time I had to press R3, I was nervous. So it added to the difficulty. Those accessibility features allowing you to just run without having to press anything, to just go through the environment without you pressing circle or X, those are game changer. And also, I think to a certain degree, being able to run automatically, it does influence how you play the game and how you fight, because you don't have to worry about sprinting. So it was a bit difficult, it was a bit rough, but you know what, with that out of the way, let's compare the games when it comes to combat and which game can actually make you bleed more. So I played both games on the hardest difficulty, which is the Give Me God of War difficulty. And I immediately noticed that you have more health. You have way more health in Ragnarok when you start the game without any upgrade. It almost feels like you have twice the life you had in God of War 2018, which is great. You know what? For the sake of this video, every time I say 2018, I'm going to refer to God of War 2018, so I don't say God of War 2018 every single time. So in 2018, it almost felt like you were almost all the time 3 hits away from death, but you can see I'm getting hit multiple times here, and those enemies are similar to the druggers at the beginning of 2018, but they hit less. They still trying to regenerate, but it's easier to interrupt them compared to before. And I gotta say, going into Ragnarok, you kind of know what to expect. 2018 was a big reboot, and if you played the previous game of God of War games, you didn't know how to feel about this new game. The camera was different, the skills were different, Kratos was different, everything was different, so you didn't know exactly how the Give Me God of War difficulty was going to be like. You didn't even know how to fight. You didn't even have any runic attack yet. You didn't even know about magic was gone. Magic was gone, your weapons were gone, it was only the Leviathan axe and that's it. So it added to difficulty. Not knowing what to expect added to making 2018 a harder game. But this time around, after beating Sigrun, Boulder, all those people, all those enemies, when you go to God of War Ragnarok, you know what to expect. You are familiar with the camera, You know how to use your axe. You know how to throw your axe and recoil it faster. You are used to all those things. So I don't think it's fair to compare the beginning of those two games, because one came out of the nowhere and the other one we knew was a sequel. And do you know what the craziest thing is? Not only do you have less health in 2018, but you also have to collect 3 items, like 3 apples or 3 horns, if you want to upgrade your rage or your health, which is different in Ragnarok, because not only do you have more health this time around, but you also only need 2. At the beginning of the game, you only need 2 apples or 2 horns to upgrade your health or rage, which is crazy. Like, not only do you have it easier when it comes to having more health, but you also don't have to collect as many items to be able to upgrade that health. So when it comes to, I would say when it comes to health, so when it comes to just health, and how it influences the game, God of War 2018 is harder. You have less room for mistakes because you have less health, so every single hit can be your death. So yeah, that's one point going to 2018. There's something else I noticed while going back to 2018. At the beginning of the game, combat is a bit boring, it's a bit stiff, it's a bit bland because you don't have any skills yet. So you have to press the same R1 button to do pretty much anything, and the only way to diversify is to throw your axe and whatnot. But you don't know anything. Let's assume that it was the first time playing God of War Ragnarok and whatnot. I think even less than 1 hour into the game, into Ragnarok, you get introduced to the ability to awaken your axe, which is already a game changer because it has the potential to stagger enemies and knock them back. So like 30 minutes into the game, and Ragnarok already has an edge when it comes to making things easier because you can awaken your weapon. That's not the only thing. Remember that it took almost half the game to get the blades, the blades of chaos. And in Ragnarok, again, I think like it only takes 1 hour. I believe it's right after the fight against Thor. You get the blades, you get some armor sets right off the bat. You don't even have to pay for anything. While before you had to see Brock, and then you realize, wait, you had nothing to buy anything, and you are basically naked. And by the time you actually get some money, you have to choose between upgrading your gear, getting a resurrection stone, or the game was just so much harder and so much less player friendly. It does feel like the game welcomes you. Ragnarok welcomes you with open arms, and right off the bat, it only takes 1 hour and you're ready to go. You're ready to kick ass. And before, your ass was getting kicked. That's the main difference. So I'm going to give another point to 2018 just because you had to endure to just struggle to get anywhere. You had to just get used to the Leviathan axe for like the majority of the game, and then you will get the blades and you will still have to do the same thing again and get familiar with the blades. But this time, not only do you get 2 weapons at the start, but you get a 3rd one later on. So I gotta say, God of War 2018 was definitely rough. It was so rough. There's something else you may have noticed. The camera is slightly closer to you, like up in your ass in Ragnarok, which is kind of silly because it's going to be relevant for the next point, which is combat. In Ragnarok, I gotta say, they introduced more. There is more diversity when it comes to the enemies you're going to face. Like it feels like every single time you go to a new realm, there's going to be new enemies, which wasn't the case before. It felt like you would fight Druggers for the majority of the game in 2018. Druggers here, Druggers left, 50 shades of the Druggers. But this time, you feel like every time you turn around the corner, there's going to be a new enemy. And some of them move so fast. It is kind of crazy. And it's possible to keep up sometimes. But knowing that, you would think because they introduced new enemy types and whatnot, which have more mobility, the camera is going to be further back. But no, it's actually a step closer to Kratos, which is weird. It is kind of weird, but I'm just going to throw it in there. I don't know if it influences the way you play the game, but the camera is somehow closer when you fight. I gotta say, when it comes to upgrading your character, it felt like it would take ages in God of War 2018. Even something as casual as getting some skills was a bit rough because XP was hard to come by. When you compare that to the ability to travel to Niflheim in God of War Ragnarok, because I actually think Niflheim is a game changer because there you cannot die. I'm referring to the training ground in Niflheim. You cannot die there, and it's the best place to practice your skills and enable to complete the labors to get rewarded with the ability to equip mods to your skills. So you have the ability to just go there and practice, and you get rewarded with XP, allowing you to get even more skills. This is amazing, right? Like you don't have to wait to just go find enemies to fight. No, you can just go to Niflheim whenever you have some XP and some skills you have to complete labors for, and then you get rewarded with XP. That's kind of crazy. Again, I have to give it to God of War 2018 when it comes to how hard it is to upgrade, because not only do you have more, you have more skills, this time around. I believe you have more skills, even though they deleted the ability to get all those skills for bare-handed or shield combat. You have more skills now because the Leviathan Axe, Drop Near, and the Blade of Chaos. That's a lot of skills. That's a lot of skills you can potentially go to Niflheim to train for. That's yeah, I do think you have it easier this time when it comes to upgrading your character. Even your starting gear, it's better. So that's what 3 points for 2018. Oh god. Oh god. There is one area where I think God of War Ragnarok actually wins when it comes to difficulty. It has to do with the enemies and how mobile and how diverse they can be in this game. So we have already established that the camera can be problematic sometimes. It's hard to keep up with the enemies, but you do have some, I'll say, tricky enemies now. They can go on ceilings and stick to walls. It's hard to see them. They can shoot poison. You can have a room filled with some little lizards going left and right. And on the hardest difficulty, it was a bit rough to keep up. And whenever you're fighting Draugrs, it's easy. Draugrs have limited mobility. They cannot just disappear. And I'm going to say they are easier to track when you compare them to all those beasts and even the raiders. The raiders, they feel like junkies. Like sometimes they just go and they just keep throwing hands. It's really hard to predict what they're going to do. So I'm going to say that the more you play God of War, the more annoying you're going to get with all those enemies you're going to encounter. Don't even get me started on the Dark F Lord. Do not. So we're going to keep this video friendly. So I don't want to start cursing. So yeah, I do think when it comes to enemies and how diverse they can be and how problematic they can be, God of War Ragnarok is actually harder. And they even managed to make the hateful bosses, those are just Draugrs, regular Draugrs. They managed to make those guys hard. So yeah, I do think when it comes to enemies diversity and how problematic they can be, this game wins. However, I do want to add that the element of surprise is everything for those two games. Going back to 2018, I was a bit craftier. I was a bit, I had knowledge about the game, so even playing on the hardest difficulty didn't feel that hard. It felt different, but it wasn't hard because I was crafty. I knew how the game works. I knew how to throw my axe to recall it faster, performing precision throws, you know, and it didn't feel hard. It felt just like a normal game. So yeah, I don't know if it meant something, but when it comes to, and again, when it comes to combat and how difficult some enemies can be, Ragnarok wins. But keep in mind that the element of surprise is everything for those two games. I want you to think about the hardest enemy you had to face in God of War 2018. Chances are it's going to be 100% Sigrun. It has to be. She is a beast. She is the almighty destroyer of runs, and she will give you a run for your money, especially if you play on the hardest difficulty. And I also want you to think about the hardest enemy you encountered in Ragnarok. Chances are it's going to be those three bitches. Yes, of course, I'm referring to the three sisters, the three berserkers, and I'm going to point out that none of those two encounters are part of the main game. And there's something I noticed, that no main boss in those two games is actually hard. I mean, not to me it wasn't, but maybe for you it was, but I didn't feel like any main boss was hard. But when it comes to Sigrun, that's an endgame boss, and even knowing that you had all the gear in the world before facing her, it was still rough. It was so rough. Same applies to the sisters. Like, anything can go wrong. And my point is, at some point, those two games will open up, right? The beginning, that's where I think Ragnarok can be harder, because, again, like I said, the more you progress, the more tedious enemies you're going to encounter until you finish the game, and that's it. But at some point in the very challenging boss, the most challenging boss you're going to encounter in 2018 is the Last Valkyrie. Because if any other Valkyrie is like, you know what, they all shout Valhalla, but they're not that hard, come on. You got this. Sigrun is the real deal. But again, all those bosses are optional bosses, and by the time you actually face them, you have all the, I'll say, all the tools in your with you to face them. But it's not the same when it comes to Ragnarok, because they keep introducing new enemy types and you can never get familiar with them, because again, every time you turn around the corner there's someone new. So even though I do believe that God of War 2018 was harder, especially at the beginning, I do think Ragnarok becomes significantly harder the more you progress in the story. So that may be me. Maybe that's just me. But I do want to know about your opinion when it comes to... Oh my god. Wait, I forgot to mention something. The Stonewall Shield. That one shield does make... You know what? Forget everything I said. Having the Stonewall Shield makes everything so much easier, because you don't have to worry about parrying. Right? You don't have to worry about anything. Yeah, you just have to sit there and block. And once in a while you have to release all that accumulated energy. Yeah, you know what? That one shield does make the whole game way easier. And anytime you use the Dauntless Shield or even the Guardian Shield, you are reminded that this is a game where timing matters. But the Stonewall Shield is just like a get out of jail card you have on you for the entirety of the game. So it does matter. Yeah, I gotta say. So long story short, again, I do think God of War 2018 is harder. You have less tools right off the bat. The beginning is rough. It's going to get rougher every step of the way until you actually get some proper gear. And even upgrading is hard. Everything is significantly harder, which may be why God of War Ragnarok is significantly easier. Maybe people complain about it. Maybe people said, hey, the game is too hard at the beginning. I want to enjoy the game right off the bat, and that's why the game became so much easier. And now every single time we play, you're gonna feel that hand holding. You can feel your hand being held, even while solving puzzle or fighting. People will just tell you what to do before you even think about doing that. So yeah. That's my... Yeah, I do think 2018 was harder. And I do want to know what you think about those two games. Which is harder? Which one was actually harder and why? Maybe I left something out. Maybe. But next time we're going to compare the Valkyrie Queens. Who is the real challenging one between Gunnar, the Trash Talker, and Sigrun, the Almighty? The one and only. Oh yeah. I'll see you soon. Don't forget to subscribe to let me know who you think is which game you think is the hardest, and bye bye.